What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack becomes the one thing that could save them all? For Alara Thorn, life had always been lived in the margins. And Omega, in the Silvercrest pack, she existed in the shadows of those born to lead, to hunt, to command. Her days were filled with kitchen duties and garden work, her nights haunted by dreams of something more, something that whispered in her bones like an old forgotten song. The pack tolerated her because pack law demanded it, but they never truly saw her. Not the way she saw them. But when the Alpha's son, her fated mate, rejected her in front of the entire pack during the lunar ceremony, everything changed. The bond that should have been sacred, eternal, was severed with a single word, never. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. The lunar ceremony had always been Alara's favorite night of the year. Even as a child, she'd watched from the crowd as mates found each other under the full moon's silver gaze, their bond snapping into place like the final piece of an ancient puzzle. She'd seen the way their eyes would meet across the ceremonial circle, recognition blazing between them like wildfire. The moon goddess herself seemed to descend during those moments, blessing the union with her ethereal light. This year, Alara stood among the unmated wolves, her heart thundering against her ribs. At 23, she was older than most who participated in the ceremony. Hope had become a fragile thing, carefully guarded in the deepest chambers of her chest. The scent of lavender and morning dew clung to her skin, her natural signature, soft and unassuming, just like her. On across the circle stood Darius Silvercrest, the Alpha's son and heir to the pack. He was everything an Alpha should be: powerful, commanding, beautiful in the way predators are beautiful. His scent, forest and embers with undertones of ozone and steel, dominated the ceremonial grounds. Wolves parted for him instinctively, their heads bowing in submission before he even looked their way. Alara had never dared to dream he might notice her. She was beneath his station in every conceivable way. Then the moon reached its zenith. The bond slammed into her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. Her wolf, usually so quiet within her, surged forward with a desperate cry. Mate! 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 The word echoed through every fiber of her being. Warmth flooded her chest, spreading outward in waves of recognition and belonging. On her eyes found his across the circle, and for one perfect, devastating moment, she saw the same shock reflected in his face. He felt it too. Time stopped. The world narrowed to just the two of them, connected by an invisible thread that hummed with power and promise. Alara's hands trembled. This was it, her purpose, her destiny, the reason she'd endured years of loneliness and dismissal. Then Darius's expression changed. Shock twisted into something darker. Disgust, perhaps, or fury. His jaw clenched. The crowd had fallen silent, every wolf present sensing the bond that had formed, understanding what it meant. No, Darius's voice cut through the night like a blade. Alara's heart stuttered. What? I, Darius Silvercrest, future alpha of the Silvercrest pack, reject you, Alara Thorn. I as my mate. The formal words fell like executioner's stones. I will never accept this bond. The pain came instantly. It felt like her chest was being torn open from the inside, her heart shredded by invisible claws. Alara gasped, stumbling backward as the bond, barely formed, so new and precious, began to fray. The warmth that had flooded her moments ago turned to ice. Please, she managed, but Darius had already turned away. I accept your rejection, someone whispered, and Alara realized with horror that the words had come from her own mouth. Her wolf was howling in anguish, but some primal part of her understood. To refuse would only prolong the agony. The bond shattered. Alara collapsed to her knees, one hand pressed against her chest as if she could physically hold herself together. Around her, the pack stirred with murmurs and whispers. She could feel their stares like brands against her skin. Did you really think, came a female voice, cold and mocking, that someone like you could ever stand beside an alpha? Alara looked up through tears to see Seraphina Vale, the pack's most beautiful beta female, standing at Darius's side. Her scent, cinnamon and iron with an underlying note of blood, wafted toward Alara on the night breeze. Seraphina's hand rested possessively on Darius's arm, her smile sharp and triumphant. "Take her away," Alpha Marcus Silvercrest commanded from his place of honor. Darius's father was a mountain of a man, all hard edges and barely contained violence. The ceremony is concluded. Two guards stepped forward, gripping Alara's arms and hauling her to her feet. Her legs wouldn't support her weight. They dragged her through the crowd like a criminal. The pack parted for them, some faces showing pity, others satisfaction, most carefully blank. "Wait!" Alara's mother's voice rang out. For one wild moment, hope flared in Alara's chest. Her parents would defend her. They would demand justice. Margaret Thorne stepped forward, her husband William beside her. They were older wolves, unremarkable in every way, but they were hers. They'd raised her, loved her. "Please, Alpha," Margaret said, and Alara's hope crystallized into something that might save her. "Please show mercy." "She's our daughter," William added, his voice rough with emotion. Alpha Marcus's expression didn't change. "What would you have me do?" Alara waited for them to demand she be allowed to stay, to keep her place in the pack despite the rejection. Our pack law was clear. A rejected mate could choose to remain, though the shame would follow them forever. "Cast her out," Margaret whispered. The world tilted. Alara must have heard wrong. She must have... "It's for the best," William agreed, not meeting Alara's eyes. She shouldn't have to endure the shame of staying. It would be kinder to let her go, to start fresh somewhere else. "No." The word barely escaped Alara's throat. "Mom. Dad. Please." But Margaret was already stepping back, her face carefully composed. "We think it's best if she leaves the Packlands entirely. Perhaps she can find acceptance elsewhere." The scent of fear hung in the air around her parents, bitter and sharp. But Alara couldn't understand it. What did they have to fear? She was the one being destroyed. Alpha Marcus nodded slowly. "Very well. The decision is made." He turned his cold gaze to Alara. "Alara Thorne, you are hereby banished from Silvercrest Packlands. You have until dawn to be beyond our borders. If you return, you will be killed." "It's winter," someone in the crowd protested weakly. "The storm." "She chose to pursue what was never meant for her," Seraphina interjected, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Let her face the consequences." The guards dragged Alara toward the edge of the ceremonial grounds. Behind her, the ceremony resumed as if she'd never existed. The moon goddess's light seemed dimmer now. Or perhaps that was just Alara's vision blurring with tears. They threw her out at the northern border, where Packlands met the wild forest. Snow had begun to fall, thick flakes that caught in Alara's dark hair and melted against her feverish skin. The broken bond still burned in her chest, a constant reminder of what she'd lost. "You should run," one of the guards said, not unkindly. "The storm's coming in fast." Then they were gone, and Alara was alone. She stumbled forward into the trees. The winter forest was deadly even for strong wolves with their pack bonds intact. For her, weak, injured, severed from everything she'd ever known, it was a death sentence. The wind picked up, howling through the bare branches. Snow fell harder, obscuring her vision. Alara's thin ceremonial dress offered no protection against the cold. She should shift, let her wolf form weather the storm, but every time she reached for that primal power, pain lanced through her chest where the bond had broken. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning as the storm intensified into a full blizzard. Alara's fingers had gone numb. Her lips were blue. Each breath felt like inhaling shards of glass. "I'm going to die out here," she thought, and was surprised by how calm the realization made her. Perhaps this was always how it was meant to end. Perhaps she'd been fighting a losing battle since birth, trying to find a place in a world that had no room for someone like her. Through the white curtain of snow, a shape emerged, dark and angular. A structure. Alara pushed toward it on legs that barely functioned, her survival instinct flaring despite her resignation. It was an old barn, half collapsed and forgotten. The door hung from one hinge, Inside, it was marginally warmer, sheltered from the wind at least. Hay moldered in the corners, and the scent of long absent animals lingered in the wood. Ilara collapsed onto the hay, her body shaking violently. The cold had invaded her bones. She couldn't feel her extremities anymore. This is it, she thought. This is how I die, alone, cast out, rejected. Her wolf whimpered in the back of her mind, but the sound was distant, muffled, as if coming from underwater. Ilara's eyes drifted closed. She didn't fight it. Warmth. That was the first thing Ilara registered as consciousness reluctantly returned. Warmth, where there should have been only cold and death. Her eyes fluttered open. Massive shapes surrounded her, dark forms that radiated heat. Wolves. The scent hit her next. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and storm. It was unlike anything she'd encountered before, ancient and powerful and absolutely overwhelming. I'm dead, Ilara thought. These are the moon goddess's guardians. Come to take me. One of the wolves shifted, and Ilara's breath caught. They were enormous, easily twice the size of the largest alpha she'd ever seen. Their fur was various shades of gray and black and silver, thick and luxurious, even in the dim light filtering through the barn's broken walls. She counted them with growing disbelief. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves, arranged in a protective circle around her, their bodies creating a barrier against the cold that still raged outside. You're awake. The voice was deep, resonant, unmistakably male. Ilara's head whipped around to find the source. The largest wolf, coal-black with eyes like molten silver, was watching her with an intelligence that was distinctly human. You can speak?" she whispered. "We can do much more than speak. Little wolf." There was amusement in his tone, but also something else. Reverence. "We've been waiting for you." "Waiting? I don't understand. Who are you?" The black wolf rose to his feet, and Ilara had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. He had to be nearly 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Impossible, mythical. "My name is Theron Ashwood. I lead the Shadow Guard." He gestured with his massive head toward the other wolves. "And you, Ilara Thorn, are the reason we exist." "That's impossible. I'm no one. I'm just—" "The matriarch," another voice interrupted. This one came from a silver-white wolf with scars crisscrossing her muzzle. "The one foretold. The one we swore to serve before we took our first breaths." Ilara's head spun. "This has to be a dream. I'm dying in the snow. And this is my mind's last desperate fantasy." "You're not dying," Theron said firmly. "Not anymore. We found you in time. Your scent called to us across miles. Lavender and morning dew and wildflowers. We've been searching for years, waiting for it to bloom fully." His silver eyes studied her intently. "The rejection shattered whatever was binding you. We felt the moment your power began to wake." "I don't have any power. I'm an Omega. You're so much more." Theron began to shift, his form rippling and changing. Ilara watched in fascination as the massive wolf transformed into a man. He was scarred and battle-worn, perhaps in his mid-30s, with long black hair pulled back from a face that could have been carved from granite. He stood easily over 6.5 feet tall, his bare chest marked with what looked like ancient symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. But it was his eyes that held her. Those same molten silver eyes that seemed to see straight through her. "Come," he said, extending a hand. "There's much you need to know, and your wolf is stirring." As if summoned by his words, Ilara felt something shift deep within her. Her wolf, so quiet for so long, was pushing against the confines of her consciousness. But it felt different now. Stronger, bigger. "Who are you?" Ilara asked her wolf silently. The response came like thunder. "I am what I was always meant to be, and so are you." The other wolves had shifted as well, becoming men and women of various ages, all bearing the same strange symbols on their skin. They knelt as one, their heads bowed. "All hail the matriarch," they intoned in unison, "the one who was lost, The one who was bound. The one who will rise. Ilara's hands trembled. Please, I don't understand any of this. What's happening to me? Theron helped her to her feet, his touch gentle despite his obvious strength. Your parents didn't tell you the truth, Ilara. They never told you what you really are. A red-haired woman stepped forward, her green eyes kind. I'm Lyra, she said softly. I have the gift of seeing, of reading histories written in blood and bone. May I? When Ilara nodded uncertainly, Lyra placed her hands on either side of Ilara's face. The world went white. A baby crying in the night. Two terrified parents holding their child as an old woman, a seer, delivers a prophecy. When the moon bleeds silver and the outcasts rise, and the matriarch will wake. She will be strength where there was weakness, power where there was submission, mercy where there was only judgment. She will come when the packs have forgotten the old ways, when they value dominance over wisdom, cruelty over compassion. And she will remake the world. The parents' fear. The decision. A dark ritual, binding magic woven into the infant's very soul, suppressing what should have been magnificent, reducing it to almost nothing. It's for her own good, the mother weeps. They'll kill her otherwise. They'll hunt her. Years passing, the binding holding, the child growing weak when she should have been strong, timid when she should have been fierce. The parents' guilt growing like a cancer, but the fear growing faster. The vision released Ilara, and she staggered backward. Theron caught her, steadying her with hands that radiated warmth and power. They bound me, Ilara whispered. My own parents. They made me weak on purpose. They were afraid, Lyra said gently. The prophecy spoke of war, of change, of the old packs falling. They thought if they bound your power, they could save you from your destiny. But the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Theron added, his voice hard. Destiny finds a way. When Darius rejected you, when he severed that bond, he unknowingly shattered the binding as well. Your parents' magic broke with the mate bond. Ilara could feel it now, the power waking inside her, stretching like a creature that had been caged for far too long. Her wolf was no longer a quiet presence in the back of her mind. She was rising, and she was massive. What am I? Ilara asked, though part of her already knew the answer. You're the first matriarch born in 300 years, said a tall man with hawk-like features. I'm Kale. I've studied the old texts. Matriarchs are the moon goddess's chosen champions, wolves of immense power who arise in times of great need. They can command any wolf beneath their authority. They can heal wounds that should be fatal. They can sense emotions, truth, and intention as easily as they can scent the wind. The last matriarch united the warring packs and brought decades of peace, added a scarred woman with kind brown eyes. I'm Mira. My grandmother's grandmother served the last matriarch. The stories were passed down. When she died, Sashi prophesied that another would come when the packs had lost their way. Ilara looked around at the 10 faces watching her with a mixture of hope and expectation. And you've been waiting for me? All of you? We were born to serve you, Theron said, simply. Each of us carries the bloodline of the Shadow Guard, the matriarch's sworn protectors. We felt the call when we came of age, knew we had to find you. Some of us have been searching for years. I'm still weak, Ilara protested. I can't even shift properly. The pain… That was the binding, Theron interrupted. It's broken now. Your wolf is free. You just need to let her out. As if in response, Ilara's wolf surged forward with a force that nearly drove her to her knees. Yes, the wolf growled. It's time. Let me show you what we truly are. I don't know how, Ilara admitted. Theron moved closer, his presence somehow both commanding and comforting. Close your eyes. Feel your wolf, not as something separate, but as part of you, the truest part. And then, just let go. Ilara closed her eyes. Her wolf was there, vast and powerful, no longer a whisper but a roar. For years, shifting had been painful, difficult, like trying to force herself through a space too small. Now it felt like coming home. She let go. The transformation began differently than any shift she'd experienced before. Instead of bone-snapping pain, there was a flowing sensation, like water finding its course. Her body restructured itself with fluid grace, bones extending, reshaping, finding new configurations. Fur emerged from her skin in waves of silver white, so pure it seemed to glow in the dim barn light. Power erupted from her core, a tidal wave of energy that had been dammed for 23 years. The barn itself seemed to shudder with the force of it. Alara's senses exploded outward. She could smell everything for miles, hear the heartbeat of every living creature in the forest, feel the very earth beneath her paws. Her paws. She looked down and shock rippled through her. Her paws were massive, easily the size of dinner plates, tipped with claws that gleamed like polished moonstone. Her body had grown, expanded, until she stood taller than any wolf she'd ever seen, taller even than Theron in his wolf form. "Look," her wolf urged. "Look at what we are." A puddle of half-melted snow served as a mirror. Alara stepped toward it and stared at her reflection. The wolf looking back at her was magnificent. Her fur was silver white, but it seemed to shimmer with an inner light, as if moonbeams had been woven into each strand. Her eyes, they'd changed from their usual pale blue to a color that defied description. Molten gold shot through with veins of silver, ancient and knowing and absolutely otherworldly. She was easily half again as large as Theron, and she could feel the power radiating from her like heat from a forge. This was no ordinary alpha. This was something else entirely. Alara opened her mouth and howled. The sound that emerged shook the barn's foundations. It wasn't just noise. It was power, authority, dominance distilled into pure sound. The walls trembled. Snow fell from the roof. And somewhere in the distance, she heard answering howls, wolves responding to a call they couldn't ignore. The Shadow Guard shifted as one, falling to their bellies in submission, their heads bowed. Even in their wolf forms, their posture spoke of reverence and absolute loyalty. "All hail the matriarch," Theron's voice echoed in her mind, and Alara realized with a start that she could hear his thoughts. The lost has been found. The bound has been freed. The weak has become the strongest of us all. Alara looked at her new form, her true form, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not a bond breaking this time, but something building. A foundation. A purpose. She was no longer the Omega who'd been rejected and cast aside. She was the matriarch. And the world was about to change. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of discovery and transformation. The storm passed, leaving the forest draped in pristine white. The Shadow Guard's encampment was hidden deep in the unclaimed territories, a place where pack law held no sway. It was a collection of cabins built around a central hall, all constructed from dark wood that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Theron proved to be a patient teacher, though his methods were demanding. Each morning began before dawn, when the world was still painted in shades of gray and blue. "Your power is immense," he explained on the third day, watching as Alara practiced shifting between forms. "But power without control is just destruction. You need to be able to shift at will, seamlessly, without thought." Alara focused, feeling the now familiar flow of energy as her body restructured itself. Human to wolf, wolf to human. It was becoming easier with each repetition, more natural. The pain that had once accompanied shifting was completely gone, replaced by a sensation that was almost pleasurable, like stretching muscles after a long sleep. "Good," Theron approved. "Now do it faster." By the end of the week, Alara could shift mid-stride, flowing from one form to the other without breaking pace. It was exhilarating, liberating, proof that her body was finally doing what it had always been meant to do. But shifting was only the beginning. "You mentioned I could sense emotions," Alara said one afternoon, sitting cross-legged in the main hall while the Shadow Guard assembled around her. "How does that work?" Lyra smiled, settling beside her. "It's not something you do exactly. It's more like opening yourself to what's already there. Every wolf broadcasts their emotional state through their scent, their posture, the subtle cues in their voice. You've been reading these things your whole life without realizing it, but a matriarch can perceive them with perfect clarity." "Try it now," Kyle suggested. He was standing across the room, his arms crossed. What am I feeling? Alara studied him. His stance was relaxed, his expression neutral, but when she reached out with that new sense, that awareness that had been dormant all her life, she felt the truth beneath the surface. You're worried, she said slowly, about whether I'll be ready in time for something. There's a deadline you're not telling me about. Kyle's eyebrows rose. Impressive. Yes, there are reports of increased activity from the local packs. They're searching for something. Probably you. Word of your rejection has spread, and some are curious about what happened to the Omega, who disappeared into a blizzard. A chill ran down Alara's spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. They're looking for me? They won't find you, Theron said firmly. His scent, oak and pine and storm, wrapped around her like a protective barrier. Not until you're ready. Not until you choose to reveal yourself. The found family dynamic of the Shadow Guard became evident in the quiet moments between training sessions. Mira, the maternal one, ensured Alara ate properly and rested enough. She'd lost her own pack years ago and had been searching for purpose ever since. I knew when I met you, Mira said one evening, unbrushing Alara's hair as they sat by the fire. I knew you were worth everything. Lyra taught Alara about pack histories and the old ways, customs and traditions that most modern packs had forgotten. The matriarch isn't just power, she explained. She's wisdom, balance, the bridge between what was and what will be. Kale shared his vast knowledge of strategy and pack politics. Darius Silvercrest made a mistake, he said matter-of-factly. He didn't just reject a mate. He rejected his pack's best chance at a prosperous future. The Moon Goddess doesn't offer second chances lightly. There were others, too. Finn, young and eager, who could track anything through any terrain. Soren, quiet and deadly, whose fighting skills were legendary. Reyna, fierce and protective, who seemed to view Alara as both queen and sister. Each had a story, a reason for being here, a piece of themselves they'd pledged to the prophecy long before they'd met Alara. And then there was Theron. He was different from the others. Where they maintained a respectful distance, he seemed to orbit closer, his presence a constant warmth at Alara's back. His scent was everywhere in the compound, marking it as his territory, but there was something else beneath it now, something that made Alara's wolf perk up with interest whenever he was near. You feel it too, he said one night when they were alone on the training grounds. The moon was nearly full, hanging heavy and silver in the sky. Alara didn't pretend not to understand. Is it another mate bond? No. Theron's expression was soft, almost vulnerable in the moonlight. Mate bonds are gifts from the Moon Goddess, but they're not the only kind of connection wolves can forge. What's growing between us? That's choice. That's two souls recognizing each other and choosing to build something together. But I was already rejected once, Alara whispered. The memory of that pain still lived in her chest, a scar that might never fully fade. Theron stepped closer, lifting her chin so their eyes met. Darius rejected a version of you that never truly existed. He rejected the binding, the suppression, the lie your parents created. He never saw the real you, Alara. He never could have. He wasn't meant to. And you are? I've been searching for you my entire life. I've studied the prophecies, tracked every rumor, followed every lead. When I finally caught your scent on the wind that night, when I found you dying in that barn, his voice roughened. I knew, not because of destiny or prophecy or fate, but because I chose to know. And I will choose you, Alara, every day for the rest of my life if you'll let me. Alara's wolf rumbled with approval, but it was her own heart that made the decision. She'd been rejected by someone who never valued her. But here was someone offering not just acceptance, but active choice. Not a bond forced by the goddess, but one built on mutual recognition and respect. I choose you too, she whispered. When Theron kissed her, it felt nothing like a mate bond snapping into place. It was better. It was theirs, built on foundations they'd laid themselves, stronger for being chosen rather than assigned. Weeks passed. Alara grew into her power like a tree growing into sunlight, reaching and expanding and becoming more than she'd ever imagined possible. She learned to project her authority, to command with just a look, to heal minor wounds with a touch. Her connection to the Shadow Guard deepened until she could feel them even when they were miles away, their presences like stars in her mental sky. "You're ready," Theron said one morning, 6 weeks after her rescue, "for whatever comes next." Alara stood in her wolf form, larger and more powerful than any creature that had walked these woods in generations. She looked at the 10 wolves who'd given up everything to find her, to serve her, to help her become who she was meant to be. "Then let's see what the world makes of the matriarch's return," she said. The scout arrived at the Silvercrest Pack borders 3 days after the full moon, his sides heaving, panic written in every line of his body. He shifted into his human form before he'd even fully stopped running. "Alpha," he gasped. "We found her. We found the Omega." Darius looked up from the papers on his desk, his expression carefully neutral. It had been 2 months since the rejection, 2 months since he'd made the decision that was supposed to secure his position as a strong leader. But something had felt wrong ever since that night. The satisfaction he'd expected never came. "Explain," he commanded. "She's alive, living in the unclaimed territories with a group of wolves we've never seen before. At least 10 of them, maybe more. They're massive, Alpha, bigger than any wolves we've encountered." Seraphina, lounging in the corner of Darius's office, laughed. "Impossible. The Omega couldn't have survived the storm, let alone found allies." But the scout shook his head vigorously. "I saw her with my own eyes. She's different. Changed. I couldn't get close enough to confirm, but—" He swallowed hard. "I think she might be a threat." Alpha Marcus entered the office, his presence immediately dominating the space. "A threat? An Omega?" "She smells different," the scout insisted. "Like power, like something ancient." Seraphina stood, her scent spiking with aggression. "We should eliminate her before she becomes a problem. If she's gathering rogues—" "We'll bring her back," Darius interrupted, though he wasn't sure why. Part of him wanted to see her again, to understand the nagging feeling in his chest that had only grown stronger with time. "Assemble a war party, 20 of our best warriors, or we'll go retrieve her." "And if she resists?" Marcus asked. Darius's jaw tightened. "Then we'll remind her what happens to wolves who defy pack law." The war party assembled at dawn. 23 wolves in total: Darius, Seraphina, the pack's beta, and 20 elite warriors. They were the strongest the Silvercrest Pack had to offer, seasoned fighters who'd never lost a territorial dispute. They found Alara's encampment 2 hours after sunrise. She was waiting for them. The clearing was larger than it had looked from the scout's description, ringed by ancient trees that seemed to watch with silent judgment. Alara stood in the center, in her human form, wearing simple clothes that somehow looked regal on her frame. Her dark hair, once always pulled back in a submissive braid, now fell loose around her shoulders. On her eyes, had they always been that color? Molten gold with veins of silver? Behind her stood 10 wolves, and the scout hadn't been exaggerating. They were enormous, each one easily twice the size of Darius in his wolf form. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their presence radiated such power that Darius's own wolves whined uneasily. Alara. Darius shifted to human form, approaching cautiously. Her scent hit him like a wall, lavender and morning dew and wildflowers, but underneath it now was something else. Power. Authority. Dominance so intense it made his wolf want to roll over and expose its throat. "Alpha Silvercrest," Alara said calmly. Not Darius, not even my former mate. Just his title, formal and distant. "You're alive." It was a stupid thing to say, but Darius's mind was struggling to process what he was seeing. And this couldn't be the same timid Omega he'd rejected. This woman stood like a queen, like power incarnate. "Did you expect otherwise?" There was no accusation in her voice, just curiosity. "We've come to bring you back," Seraphina announced, stepping forward. Her scent was spiked with aggression and barely concealed rage. You belong to the Silvercrest Pack, Omega. You have no right to— The largest black wolf behind Alara snarled, a sound so deep and menacing that it reverberated through the clearing like thunder. Seraphina flinched despite herself. I belong to no one, Alara said softly, but her words carried weight that made the air itself feel heavy. I was cast out, remember? Banished. By your Alpha's decree and my parents' plea. That was a mistake, Darius found himself saying. I shouldn't have. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Alara's golden eyes fixed on him, and Darius felt like he was being seen for the first time. Every flaw, every weakness, every moment of selfishness laid bare. I didn't come here to negotiate. I came here to deliver a message. What message? Alpha Marcus had shifted now too, standing beside his son. The old ways are returning, Alara said. The ways you've forgotten in your pursuit of power and status. The ways that valued wisdom over cruelty, strength over dominance, compassion over fear. Seraphina laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Big words from an Omega with delusions of grandeur. Did your new pack of rogues fill your head with— She didn't get to finish. Alara's eyes flashed, and a wave of power washed over the clearing. It was palpable, undeniable, irresistible. Every wolf from the Silvercrest pack, including Darius and his father, felt their knees buckle with the urge to submit. I am no Omega, Alara said, and her voice seemed to resonate with otherworldly authority. I never was. I was bound, suppressed, made into something lesser than my true self. But that binding is broken now, and I stand before you as what I was always meant to be. And what is that? Darius managed, though his wolf was howling at him to submit, to bow, to acknowledge the superior power standing before him. Before Alara could answer, Seraphina lunged. It was a stupid move, born of wounded pride and rage, but Seraphina had never been known for her wisdom. She shifted mid-leap, her beta wolf form aiming straight for Alara's throat. Alara didn't even blink. She raised one hand almost lazily, and Seraphina's wolf slammed into an invisible barrier. The impact sent her sprawling backward, yelping in surprise and pain. Before she could recover, Alara shifted. The transformation was instantaneous. One moment human, the next a massive silver-white wolf that towered over every other creature in the clearing. Darius's wolf whimpered. This was impossible. Alara moved with fluid grace, crossing the distance to Seraphina in a single bound. She pinned the smaller wolf to the ground with one massive paw, her jaws closing around Seraphina's throat with enough pressure to make her point without drawing blood. Submit, Alara's voice echoed in every wolf's mind, a mental command that couldn't be ignored. Or die. Seraphina went limp, exposing her throat fully in the ultimate gesture of submission. Alara held her for a moment longer, then released her and stepped back. Behind her, the Shadow Guard shifted as one. Their transformation was like watching legends come to life. These weren't normal wolves. They were dire wolves, mythic guardians that hadn't walked the earth in centuries. Each one was massive, ancient, radiating power that made the Silvercrest warriors look like pups. We are the Shadow Guard, the largest black wolf, Theron announced, his mental voice resonating through every mind present. Sworn to serve the matriarch, bound by prophecy and choice to protect the one who will restore balance to the packs. Matriarch? Alpha Marcus breathed. Alara shifted back to human form, standing tall and unashamed. When the moon bleeds silver and the outcasts rise, the matriarch will wake. She will be strength where there was weakness, power where there was submission, mercy where there was only judgment. She recited the words like a prayer. I am that matriarch, the firstborn in 300 years, and I claim these territories as my own. The clearing fell silent. Darius stared at the woman he'd rejected, the woman who'd seemed so beneath him, and felt the full weight of his mistake crash down on him. The moon goddess had given him a matriarch as his mate, and he'd thrown her away out of pride and ambition. Please, he heard himself saying, dropping to his knees. Please. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Let you what? Alara asked, and there was no cruelty in her voice, just tired patience. Take back your rejection? Claim me now that I'm valuable? You accept the bond that you broke? Yes, Darius said desperately. The bond. We could try to rebuild. The bond is dead, Darius. You killed it. And even if it could be revived, I wouldn't want it. She gestured to Theron, who'd shifted back to human form and now stood at her side. I found something better than a bond dictated by fate. I found someone who chose me when I had nothing to offer but myself. The possessive way Theron's hand settled on her waist, the way Alara leaned into him. It told a story that needed no words. Darius felt something crack in his chest, grief and regret, for something he'd never valued until it was gone. What will you do to us? Alpha Marcus asked, his voice carefully controlled. You have the power to destroy us. Alara looked at the 23 wolves who'd come to capture her. I'm probably to drag her back in chains or kill her if she resisted. Her expression softened with something that might have been pity. I could destroy you, she agreed. I could tear through your warriors like paper. I could take your pack, your territory, everything you've built. The prophecy says I will remake the world, and that could mean burning down the old order entirely. The Shadow Guard tensed, ready to act on her command. The Silvercrest wolves cowered. But I choose mercy, Alara continued. Not because you deserve it, but because that's what a matriarch does. We rebuild. We heal. We don't perpetuate the cycles of cruelty and dominance that have poisoned the packs. She took a step forward, and even in human form, her power was undeniable. You will return to your pack, Alpha Marcus, and you will tell them what you've seen here today. You will tell them the old ways are returning, and you will institute new laws. What laws? Marcus asked warily. No wolf will be cast out for being rejected. No wolf will be punished for circumstances beyond their control. Omegas will be valued for their gentleness, rather than scorned for their lack of aggression. Strength will be measured not just in combat prowess, but in wisdom, compassion, and the ability to build rather than destroy. Ilara's eyes found her former mate. And you, Darius, will learn what it means to be a true alpha. Not a tyrant. Not someone who values power over partnership. You'll be better. Or you'll be replaced. And Seraphina? Darius asked, looking at the beta female who was still lying submissive on the ground, trembling. Ilara considered. She attacked me out of pride and jealousy. Those are poor foundations for any wolf, but especially for one who would claim high rank. She looked at Seraphina directly. You're stripped of your beta status. You'll start again from the bottom, and if you earn your way back up, it will be through service and growth, not manipulation and cruelty. Seraphina's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't protest. These are my terms, Alara said, addressing the entire group. You have 1 week to implement them. After that, I'll be checking on your progress, and if I find you've returned to your old ways... The Shadow Guard growled in unison, a sound that promised violence. Well, let's just say it would be better for everyone if you took this seriously. This is my territory now, Alara declared, or her voice carrying across the clearing with undeniable authority. These unclaimed lands, they claim me now as their guardian. Any wolf seeking refuge, any outcast, any creature rejected by packs too blind to see their worth, they're welcome here. This is where the new order begins. Alpha Marcus nodded slowly, intelligence gleaming in his eyes. He understood what he was seeing, a power shift that would ripple through every pack within 1,000 miles. It will be done, matriarch. Good. Alara's expression softened slightly. Now go, before I change my mind about mercy. The Silvercrest wolves retreated, moving slowly at first, then faster as they put distance between themselves and the overwhelming power radiating from the matriarch and her guard. Darius looked back once, his expression haunted, but Alara had already turned away, and she had no more words for the man who'd rejected her. That chapter of her life was closed. And so Alara's journey, from Omega to matriarch, from rejected to revered, reached its first true milestone. She'd been cast out into the winter storm to die, but she'd emerged transformed, not just surviving, but thriving. She'd been bound and suppressed her entire life, told she was weak when she was actually the strongest of them all. In the weeks that followed, News of the matriarch spread like wildfire through the pack networks. Some alphas were skeptical, others were terrified. But the outcasts, the rejected, the gentle souls who'd never quite fit into the harsh hierarchies of traditional packs, they started to make their way to Alara's territory. One by one at first, then in groups. Alara welcomed them all. Her territory grew. The Shadow Guard trained new recruits. Theron stood beside her as her chosen mate, her equal in all things, building something new with her. The found family she'd discovered in that barn expanded to include dozens, then hundreds of wolves who'd been searching for a place to belong. She learned that true strength wasn't about dominance or violence. It was about choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier. It was about building communities based on mutual respect rather than fear. It was about recognizing that every wolf, Omega, Beta, Alpha, had value beyond their designation. The prophecy had spoken of her remaking the world. She'd thought it would require force, conquest, the kind of dramatic revolution that left scorched earth in its wake. But the real revolution was quieter, deeper. Anahia was teaching wolves that there were different ways to be strong. That gentleness wasn't weakness. That choosing compassion didn't make you a target. It made you a leader worth following. Months passed. The old packs watched and waited, some adapting to the new reality, others clinging stubbornly to their old ways. Alara knew there would be challenges ahead, threats both external and internal. The prophecy had mentioned ancient evil, and she could feel it stirring somewhere beyond the borders of her territory. Something old and hungry, drawn by the power signature she couldn't fully suppress. But standing in her territory on a clear winter night, surrounded by the Shadow Guard and the hundreds of wolves who'd pledged themselves to her cause, Alara felt ready. She'd been tested by rejection, by abandonment, or by the brutal indifference of those who should have protected her. And she'd emerged stronger, wiser, more herself than she'd ever been allowed to be. She was the matriarch. This was her territory. These were her people. And whatever came next, she would face it not as the frightened Omega she'd been, but as the queen she'd become. Did you find Alara's transformation as powerful as I did? Her journey from rejected Omega to the matriarch shows us that sometimes the cruelest betrayals unlock our greatest potential. What do you think was the turning point in her story? When she was rejected? When the Shadow Guard found her? Or when she chose mercy over vengeance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing what resonated with you most. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with anyone who loves a good werewolf tale. Subscribe and click the bell so you never miss the next chapter, because Alara's story is far from over. The blood moon is rising, ancient evils are stirring, and the matriarch will need all her power for what comes next. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next chapter.